What's up, family? Welcome to Ask to My Odds.
Where we challenge you to stop playing and start pushing.
This right here is my delectable wife, Yana.
And this right here, this is my intelligent husband, Ayise. All right, y'all, we're going to get it started. We are doing part 2 of a question that came into us some time ago. And it's quite a long question, so we've broken it down. And why can't I minimize this? Okay, never mind. I know what I'm going to say. Sorry, y'all. And so we've broken it down, and we're going to pick up. So if you look to the bottom of the video, you'll see a link that'll take you to the first part of the question if you missed that part. Where am I starting at, honey? Okay, here we go. We're in part 2, the middle portion of the letter, very long letter. She says, my best friend, who was bisexual, knew of my past. However, I didn't open up to her until after she told me she was bisexual, and she was always attracted to me. We had been friends a long time before I knew this about her. I never had a clue. Once she disclosed this info to me, I kept it to myself. I never told my husband because of how he was. He seemed jealous of my relationships. He seemed to have an issue with everything and everyone. And to top it off, he was homophobic. So I thought, my husband should be my best friend. I should be comfortable telling him everything without judgment. It made it very uncomfortable for me at first, knowing my best friend had been attracted to me many years ago. But we moved on and never let that hinder our friendship. I will say there were times I thought about my past and my curiosity. So years later, one day she and I went out. We had drinks and a night of fun. However, on the way home, we ended up kissing. Awkward. To this day, I'm not really sure what brought this on, but we kissed. That is all it was, a kiss. I will say that I was very vulnerable, and she knew it. But nothing became of that, and we moved on. When she told me the truth about herself and how she once felt about me, she also told me about a friend of hers who knew all about me and how, let me start over. Sorry, y'all. When she told me the truth about herself and how she once felt about me, she also told me about a friend of hers who knew all about me and how my best friend used to feel about me. Well, she used that information to her advantage. One day, we all went out. She was a very nice girl, and we all had a good time. This girl, however, had an ulterior motive. She invited my best friend and I back to her house. She gave us drinks and put on porn movies. Of course. I'm sorry, I have a cold. Of course, I was horny and very aroused watching it. She walked to the back of her apartment, and about 10 minutes later, she asked us to come back. She was basically setting us up for a threesome. Lights were out, and soft music was playing. Now, for someone as curious as me, you would think I would be excited or thinking, I can finally get my chance to find out. But that couldn't be further from the truth. I was extremely uncomfortable and wanted to run. My best friend was uncomfortable, too. So basically, all that happened was some touching. No oral sex or anything like that. Again, my best friend and I never really discussed that day, but maybe just about how embarrassed we both were. My friend always had my best interest at heart and never wanted to see me get hurt. Fast forward, my husband, about a year and 4 months ago, decided to have a conversation about polygamy with my son. My son, with his curious mind, after watching a clip from the news, said he wouldn't mind having 2 or more women. Of course, my husband whispered to me, it's a double standard, because what man wouldn't want 2 women? And then he kind of smiled at me. I'm thinking, he can't be serious, not my husband. So this started a night of a long pillow talk discussion. Questions were asked of me like, have I ever, would I ever, are any of my friends gay or bisexual, or do I know anyone who is, blah, blah, blah. Of course, at the time, I'm thinking he seems so sincere, which is rare during any of our conversations. I was very timid and was thinking he had an ulterior motive to get me to confess to something. I took a gamble, and I confessed that my best friend had been with a woman before. Her being bisexual was not mentioned at the time. Of course, he then asked me, have I ever kissed her or considered a threesome? Again, I was even shocked at the question, but of course I shrugged it off as no big deal and said, ew, heck no. That's my best friend. I was not completely comfortable giving that info. This conversation started a bunch of other conversations and sparked his obvious curiosity, getting the answer himself. "Have you been with my wife?" Instead of simply saying no, she says, "I am not going to talk about anyone else's business. If you want to know about your wife, ask your wife." Now, my husband is a police officer and he interrogates people for a living. That basically answered his question. He told her he had to call her right back because someone had come into his office. She then calls me to say what was being said, and of course I'm like, "Why didn't you just say no?" She said, "What is the big deal? It happened a long time ago. You know he likes it anyway and he is curious. Besides, he's going to be calling me back. What do you want me to say?" I said, "Well, it's too late now. You have already answered his question. Just admit to it," which is exactly what she did. Ooh, there's a long letter. This started a month of hell for me. My husband comes home after that conversation with her with flowers for me. He has never bought me flowers before. This is getting interesting. It's like, okay. So I was completely shocked and confused. I was thinking, "Lord, you can't be serious. You can't possibly be using this ordeal to bring us closer." I was so hurt, I didn't know what to think. It took me admitting to being with a woman for him to show any type of admiration toward me. How could that be? He quickly became very interested in what I had to say. He gave me undivided attention, which he never does. He seemed totally sincere and understanding. Then he shocked me even more by saying he wanted to see me and my best friend together, and he wanted a threesome. What? Lord, really? This isn't your will for my life, is it? But I was scared to say no. He seemed so into me. We started having sex almost every day. He was being a little bit more freaky, excuse my expression. He seemed to be very aroused and horny, but it wasn't me at all. It was his thoughts that brought all of this on. He wasn't turned on by me. He was turned on by the thought of his fantasy finally being played out. I know this is long and I am sorry. Child, you ain't never lied. I need healing. My marriage needs healing and I'm desperate. I don't think he will do counseling again. I need direction from the Lord. Yes, you do. Moving on. So, once he started acting more into me, and after the discussions of having a threesome, I agreed to do it. I was liking the attention he was giving me. Even though I had a hard time understanding how this situation was going to turn my marriage around, I was going to do it anyway. Deception big time. I was being deceived, and the enemy was using my husband to do it. He started asking me questions about my past, which made me very uncomfortable because I was still unsure of his motives. I went ahead and told him what happened to me as a young girl. My story didn't seem to bother him much because he figured I wasn't being all the way truthful. In his mind, I had been with several women sexually for the majority of my life. He thought that it was my lifestyle, and nothing I could say or do would change his mind. He also kind of figured out that I was basically having an emotional connection to another female. Another story I didn't mention. We can touch on that later. Whew. He then got angry when my truth didn't line up with the truth in his head. Things were not as they appeared to be. He was thinking all kinds of things about me that were not true at all. But in his mind, because they were his thoughts, it must have been true. He started contacting my best friend again, asking her different questions about me, us, and things in general. My husband, being the type of person he was, would interpret things totally different from how they actually were, and he would come home to me and think I would be lying. So basically, there was a lot of back and forth between him and my best friend, between him and I, and between her and me. Stories would get really mixed up. He lashed out at her, cursed her out, and told her she was no longer welcome in our home. He was basically upset that things were not going his way. Woo! That's part 2, y'all. We ain't even got to part 3. We're going to stop right there and give a little commentary. And in part 3, we will actually really round this out. And we're going to give you a very clear response in terms of our overall thoughts and recommendations for you. Can you bring that back though? I need to see. Go ahead, honey. You want to speak on some things? Is this a lot of stuff? A lot of stuff in your head right now?
Yeah, a couple of things stood out to me. The whole thing about fulfilling every guy's fantasy of being with 2 women. First and foremost, that it's not every guy's fantasy. That is a lot of guys' fantasy, but it's not every guy's fantasy. So let's make that plain. In addition to that, I would say that, well, one question I do have is, did she kiss her friend when she was married?
That's what it appears.
Yeah, I believe that that's what was said or that's what was implied. And if so, I think that
Yeah, she was vulnerable because she wasn't really connected with her husband in the
mm,
relationship and that kind of thing.
yeah. So I mean, you were being deceitful. I mean, you were being deceptive in your relationship and not honoring your commitment or obligation to your husband and the vows that you made. So you came up short right there. Basically, I think that even though you were faced with temptation and even though you were faced with a situation where your needs weren't being met emotionally or maybe even physically, there's still no excuse for you to step outside your relationship, even if it's with somebody of the same sex. Some people think that, this is just my friend, this is just my girl, and blah, say blah. But if you're having an emotional connection with somebody else that turns intimate outside of your relationship, then that's infidelity. It's as simple as that. So you cheated on your husband, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Um, we split this letter up because it was so long, and we wanted to be able to get it all out and just provide some commentary and some feedback along the way. But really, I think the thing that is standing out to me the most, the energy that I'm feeling from your letter, is just confusion, emotional chaos. But I know enough to know that there really is no such thing as confusion.
Mm-hmm.
That when we say we're confused, when we say we're mixed up, we don't know what to do. For example, you said when your husband started showing interest in you and giving you undivided attention because he found out that you had kissed your best friend and he was trying to see what was up, you're like, Lord, really? Like, I'm getting this attention now and this is going to be what brings us together? This is what's going to make us closer? You knew that really wasn't it, because later on in your letter you say that it wasn't that he was that much more attracted to you. It wasn't that there was that much more of an emotional connection. It was about his fantasy. It was about what he was projecting onto you, and so you knew that. And so I just want to show you how we answer ourselves in our own gut feelings, and even in this letter you answered yourself. I'm curious. I kind of want to skip down to the end and see what is it exactly that you're looking for from us. But we haven't done that. We purposely
Mm-hmm.
did not read the entire letter all at once. We just scrolled down and said, "Dang, this is long," but we purposely didn't do that. But what I will say is that, again, on that confusion piece, what do you get out of being confused, sister? What do you get out of being in this place where I'm not certain about my sexuality? I'm not certain about what's going on with me and my husband, and I'm not certain about what I feel about me and my best friend or whomever. What do you get from that? Because really, the answers are all within you. Really, you know what is and you know what isn't. You know that you and the relationship that you have with your husband is not the one you want. You know what's missing and you know what you need. You do. So what's the barrier? What are you confused about? You know, and at least you have said, it's really the sexual piece is the curiosity for you. You don't necessarily want an emotional connection with women and that kind of thing. So you know what that's about. It sounds like you're a person of faith. It sounds like because of that, and some of the language in your letter, it sounds like you don't think that that's something that you should be doing or you want to be doing. But yet you find yourself doing it in terms of being with other women. And certainly, as my husband already talked about, you're married, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're married, so you got somebody all up in your relationship anyway, and we know that that's not at least how most marriages get down.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you get? How do you get served by being confused? Well, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
tell you real quick. And I'll let you bring it home. When we stay confused, we don't have to take any action. We don't have to be decisive in doing the things that are hard to do and telling sister, you're gonna have to step, because you know what? It's all about me. And it's about me figuring out what I'm doing in my marriage and if we're going to move forward or if I'm going to move forward on my own. But right now, this is not cool. I can't do this because this is distraction. It prevents you from saying to your husband, you know what? This relationship that we've had is not working. And the fact that you're using, another person and this threesome and all of that to somehow try to, manipulate this relationship is not all right. And so I've got to set some standards up here. The fact that you're not saying to yourself, you know what? I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm not that little girl. I'm a grown woman. And so I can look at my life and I can decide to do something different and to figure out what it is I need to be doing. Whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whatever. The fact that you choose not to do that serves you so much more than you realize. And so my suggestion for you, my strong recommendation, is that you get clear real fast. Get real clear real fast. You're not confused. You're not. This is confusing, but you choose the confusion. And I want you to think about between now and the next video we do where we wrap this letter up and really give you our solid bottom line answer. Think about why you love to be confused.
What was all this for?
Because it was a fly or some little gnat in front of me.
Hey, just to wrap this up, I think that you need to hold yourself to a higher standard, a higher level of accountability in your relationship. You are married and you did commit to some vows, so I think that you need to honor those and respect those. But in addition to that, I respect the fact that you've put this letter out here and you're allowing us to process it, because what this shows to me is courage. You're seeking help, even though you said that you all don't think that you'll be willing to go through the therapeutic process. I would really encourage you all to do that. And if he doesn't want to do it, then please, please, please do it for yourself, because you need it, sis. And in addition to that, what I want to say is that I think that it's okay to give yourself some grace. This letter right here is really process in print. And so what you're showing
Say
to
that
me,
again.
this letter is process in print. So what you're revealing and exposing is what a whole lot of people are going through but don't have the courage and the confidence to say. So again, I applaud you for attempting to work through this and for processing this and allowing us to assist you in that process. So again, give yourself some grace, hold yourself to a higher standard, honor your vows, and get away from that confusion, because you know what you need to do. And at the end of the day, if all else fails, you need to stop playing and start pushing.